Our first question comes from Blood Red Hog, who observes, it seems the only years we've had hugely successful football seasons are times when we've had an abundance of in-state talent. Is a large number of in-state talent basically a requirement for having an exceptional season? Hey, it always helps. Best team in the last 8 years, the 2011 Hogs, that was largely built on a quarterback from Arkansas and several receivers from the state. A lot of Houston Nuts better teams were stacked with Arkansas kids. Danny Ford's 95 Hogs had guys like Barry Lunny and Madre Hill from Arkansas. But look, recruiting has changed. Lately, the number of SEC quality kids in Arkansas, it's down. Only 4 signed by Sam Pitman's first staff, but they did sign or bring in a number of preferred walk-on from the state, and I think that's going to be an approach you see more in the future. I think Pitman will be capable of having some really good teams without an overload of Arkansas kids because of the way he recruits. But this thing cycles. We'll have other big classes from this state down the road, and I think it is still important to bring in a lot of Arkansas kids. And if you can have a big year, that's great in state. Jay Hicks, 3636, asks, can you assign a grade to Pittman's first recruiting class in view of the limited time he had to put it together? You know, I'd give him an A, and it's not just me. The analyst on the SEC network said he did a better job than any of the other new coaches, and it's important to note that Pittman said it wasn't good enough, and it will be a lot better in the future. I call that play brother says, Coach Sam Pittman has decades of position coach experience among the NCAA big boys. Is that really more practically applicable to making quality in-game decisions than being a 2 or 3 year head coach at a place like Upper Iowa? Or is that sort of expertise not why we hired Sam Pittman to begin with? Well, it's a good question. And in most cases, I'd say yes. Being on the sidelines at places like Georgia, big-time SEC games expose Pittman to a lot of stuff you don't get as a head coach at a small school. But the bottom line is we can speculate and speculate, but until Pittman is out on those sidelines making decisions that a head coach makes, we're not going to know. Swine America wants to know, as someone who loved the atmosphere of Barnhill, are you aware of any discussions regarding playing women's basketball home games there? Last time I went to a ladies' game at Bud Walton, there were about 2,000 people there, and it was as if I was at a polka festival at the Hollywood Bowl. You know, I get where you're coming from. 3,000 at Barnhill has a lot more impact than 3,000 at Bud Walton or 2 or whatever. But the bottom line is the players don't want to play in Barnhill. The head coach doesn't want it, and believe me, recruits would not be impressed. Now, what we just got yesterday was the biggest crowd since 2011. It's all about being ranked. They're a top 25 team. They're getting bigger crowds this year. If he gets them up into the top 10, Gary Blair was pulling in 6,000 or more for SEC games years ago and once had 14,500 for a WNIT final there. So hang in there if you're going to women's games in Bud Walton, it will get better. Pork Soda asks, as you interact with people in and around the football program, have you noticed any changes in the general atmosphere as opposed to the previous coaches? Are people more upbeat, engaged, or is it just business as usual? We haven't been around this staff very much so far because of recruiting, but the day after signing day, Pittman put all of his coaches in front of the media, and by all accounts, they were a big hit. You got Kendall Briles, when he was asked if he might have most of his offense installed by the first game next fall, looked at the guy like, what? Then he said he hoped to have most of it installed when spring football started. So there was also Brad Davis, and the O-line coach. He was asked about Arkansas's offensive line issues of the past several years. He said, basically, I came here to kick butt. We're going to get it done. Barry Odom, defensive coordinator, former Missouri head coach, when asked about new Missouri coach Eli Drinkwitz's complaint that Arkansas went around offering kids that Missouri offered, said, I don't worry about what other coaches think about our recruiting. I worry about what I think. So look, there was an overwhelmingly positive response by the fans to those guys. Compare that to Chad Morris, who kept most of his coaches away from the media and the fans. Look, when you got coaches that can express themselves, you don't have to hide them from the public. I was there in 1969, wants to know, back in the days of a certain coach who was fired by the now KU athletic director, and we were actually winning games, did the Arkansas sports writers in the press box openly root for the Hogs? No. Cheering is not allowed in any SEC press box I've ever been in, certainly not at Arkansas. It's considered unprofessional, and it will get you kicked out. Now, occasionally you'll get a booster that'll wander into the press box here and they start cheering and they're quickly escorted out and back to whatever seat they came from. Sabad asks, how much is Auburn paying and how much is our buyout reduced by the recently dismissed Chad Morris? As far as I know, his exact salary has not been released, but in checking around, most seem to think that he's going to get under $1 million a year, maybe $900,000. If you consider that Auburn's defensive coordinator is getting $2.5 million this next year, I don't think that's going to fly with Arkansas. Now, Morris's payout is around $2.5 million a year for 5 years, so my guess is Arkansas would contest anything under maybe $1.5 million a year, and if they get to a point where it's agreed to that, then you're going to see $1.5 million a year come off of that $2.5 million total, but those things, again, will probably get negotiated. The Bionic Pig wants to know which coach's dismissal would benefit the Hogs recruiting the most in Texas. $5 million a year, Tom Herman is 25-15 at Texas. $7 million a year for Jimbo Fisher, who's 23-18 versus Power 5 opponents in the last 4 years. For me, no question, it's Fisher. If the Aggies at some point end up firing Jimbo, and considering his huge salary, he's been a disappointment, where would they go then? Chaos in College Station would certainly help Arkansas big time, but hey, if Texas fires Pee Wee Herman, that would be great for Arkansas too. Cowhog32 wants to know your thoughts on the XFL. If it doesn't crash and burn right away, do you see it as an option for kids that don't qualify for D1 schools instead of them going the JUCO route? You know, I watched a game Saturday night, 20,000 people. That's a good high school crowd. I think the average fan is footballed out by this time of year. There's not enough football fanatics out there to sustain a sizable TV audience. It's been the problem all along. And as far as kids bypassing the JUCOs to go straight to the XFL, I don't see it. There is a physicality needed in football, even at that level, that's not there with 18-year-old kids. Arkansas asks, some Hogville members have gone to practices and say that it appears the fence in the right field corner has been moved in. The home team dugout is now on the first base side. Will fans that have tickets for years over on the third base side be moved to the first base side? Well, first of all, I'm told that it's only the foul pole that's been moved in. It kind of looks funny if you look at it now. And they had to do that because of the footing for either the new performance center or maybe that new equipment shed that's being built out there. I'm not sure which, but that's why the pole was moved, and it's going to be moved back out next season. So it'll only be that way for 1 year, and it's a few feet. It's moved in a few feet. Now, here's the interesting part. Arkansas is going to remain in the third base dugout this season and next season. And in 2022, if they move over to the other dugout, a determination will be made if the athletic department will allow fans to switch their seats. But based on what I've been told, it sounds like that whole tunnel thing from the performance center out to the first base dugout is up in the air. And if you think about it, what do they do in football? What do they do in basketball? You have a practice locker room and your performance center, and then you go over to the field the day of a game. You could do the same thing with baseball. They already got a locker room with a tunnel behind that third base dugout. I think they're probably going to continue to do it that way. Orlando Hogg wants to know, where do you see the women's basketball team ranked in the NCAA tournament? And do you think they have the team to make a Cinderella run? They've been strong all year, but the bad loss to North Carolina could hurt the seeding. I think those two South Carolina losses will be canceled out by that blowout win over Kentucky, which was ranked 15th. I think that's going to help them big time. They were a projected 10 seed before that game. I'll take a stab and say they'll end up as an 8 seed, maybe a 7. I don't think there'll be a Cinderella run. There's a lot of good teams out there right now. That may be, and I don't know it'll be a Cinderella run at the time, but that may be a year or two down the road. Pork Soda is back. What quarterbacks will be here in the spring, and do you think we will have a #1 quarterback by the end of spring practice? Who is your pick to start the first game? Also, Rakeem Boyd is going to be our #1 running back, but with Whaley graduating, who do you think will be #2? Felipe Franks, the grad transfer from Florida, he's going to join Jack Lindsey, John Stephen Jones, KJ Jefferson. Now look, you don't bring in a grad transfer to sit on the bench. I expect Franks to be the man very quickly. He's got a stronger arm than Nick Starkel, and to me, He's a better runner than any of the current quarterbacks, including Jefferson. He's 6'6", weighs about 230. He's a physical runner, but he's got good quickness, and he's been around the block. He knows how to run in a game. Now, he's going to start this fall. Now, at running back, keep an eye on freshman Dominique Johnson. He's a power runner with 4.5 speed, but some say he's faster than that. He averaged a whopping 10 yards a carry in high school. Now look, Chase Hayden's coming back, T.J. Hammonds, they'll be in the mix along with Traylon Smith. He's a redshirt junior that will that transferred in from Arizona last year, Arizona State, and sat out. So all of those are a possibility. I am Hoggio Julio asks, how's the mood around the basketball team? Will they be able to weather this storm of adversity, or has it beaten them down too much this year? Gee, it's not looking good right now at 2 games below 500 with a lot of tough games still coming up. That's in SEC play. You know, Isaiah Joe's surgery, he's out for at least 2 more weeks. Jimmy Witt's bad back and the number of minutes Mason Jones has been playing are all a problem moving forward. Plus the sheer number of fouls called in the Missouri game played into their hands. They shot 44 free throws, made 34. That's 77%. And then 4 Razorbacks fouled out, 3 of them starters. Come on, that did it right there. All right, that's it for this week. I'll be back again next Monday for more of Ask Mike.